Still watching the movies. Okay, so this next one I watched was one I've been wanting to see for several years, and they just put it on Criterion Channel at the beginning of October. Um, Actually, when I was in Italy, so I wasn't able to watch it right away, or I would have watched it right away. So this is Stephen Frears' My Beautiful Laundrette. The thing is with Stephen Frears is I like some of his films. Love The Grifters. Love Dangerous Liaisons. Pretty much dislike everything else he's ever done. Except most recently, I did enjoy A Very English Scandal. So I don't think that I need to watch more of his '80s films because there's a few other '80s films of his that look like perhaps I'll like them. So My Beautiful Laundrette contains lots of things that I love about um, Frears and a handful of things that I don't. One, that he can sometimes be a bit muddled in what he's trying to say in a film. Like I don't know if it's depends on the editor he works with or what, but sometimes there's just so many ideas swirling around and they don't ever coalesce in his films. And this unfortunately is one of those where it doesn't quite ever mesh. And I'm wondering if it's because it was made originally supposed to be on Channel 4, but then it premiered at the Edinburgh Film Festival and did so well that it went to theaters instead and then stayed in theaters forever and then became a movie. Is the pacing an issue because it was supposed to be television? I don't know. But it contains a great breakout performance from Daniel Day-Lewis. This was filmed just before his other big sort of breakout role in um, James Ivory's God, wow, okay. I'm tired. James A. Ivory's this is gone. Room with a View. I don't really like Room with a View. That's why it left my brain. It was listed as one of the 50th greatest British film of all time for the BFI. It's on BFI's best queer films of all time list. Although I take offense to the BFI best queer films of all time list because it does not have Morris on it, also known as Maurice. Came out in '87. Really underrated, amazing film should be on that list. Also not on that list, Another Country. And I'm like, but anyways, My Beautiful Laundrette follows a young man named Omar who is living in South London. His father was a radical Pakistani journalist who has slowly sort of devolved into alcoholism. And Omar is working as his caretaker. He's also on the dole, as many a British person was in the mid 80s during the Thatcher era. As you know, the Thatcher era in England corresponded with the Reagan era in America. It was very similar, all about greed and cutting of social programs. So, um, Omar has not gone to college. His father is a intellectual. He wants him to go to college, but he's gonna have his uncle, who's a successful Pakistani, London Pakistani entrepreneur. This is a tight knit community. Um, he's gonna ask him to hire his son, and his uncle immediately takes to him, and he starts him in one business, and then gets him into another business, and then it becomes the laundrette. This story is inspired by the screenwriter, what was his name? Hanif Kureishi, who, hopefully I said that right, who was we're trying to figure out what he wanted to write about. Knew he wanted to be a writer, and started talking to his Pakistani family about this close knit community of London Pakistani entrepreneurs, and thus one of his family members ran a bunch of laundrettes, and here you have the story. So he's got this laundrette. He's also re-met his friend from his youth, Johnny, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, who's also, spoiler alert, not really his lover. And the rest of the film sort of follows them as they set up their laundrette, as they deal with family issues, including the fact that they want him to marry one of his cousins and many other things, all the while trying to maintain a relationship. I enjoyed the aesthetics of the film in terms of the way it looked. I was not a big fan of its frenetic soundtrack. I'm not sure what they were doing with some of the sound design. It was a little weird. And not weird in a good way, just like, why did you do that kind of way? But I also, and it could be that this was because this is the Thatcher era, and so this is how they felt they needed to portray the story or what. But the moments of intimacy between this couple felt very false. They didn't feel real. They didn't feel true. There's about two moments in the whole film where I felt like this was a couple and I felt like a real couple. And there are actually two moments that mirror each other where um, Johnny kisses Omar on the back of his neck, and then later in the film, Omar does the same thing to Johnny to make him feel better. Those moments felt real and true. Um, there's very little sex in the movie, and maybe again, it's supposed to be for TV, so who knows. But even what's there doesn't quite feel all that realistic. Um, they were never able to really straight out say that they're a couple, but it's all a lot of implied things, which again could be commentary on Thatcher era homophobia. I don't know. I was not a teenager or young 20s something in Thatcher era London. So maybe my problems with the film are because I'm not as familiar with the era that it was set in and the limitations in which it was functioning. That, and I look at a film just made 2 years later, Morris again, that is able to do all of these things being made at the exact same time in England. So I don't know. I don't know. So I loved bits of it, and bits of it, it didn't quite work for me. But the parts that did really work were the frustrating family moments. That family felt real, and the family felt close knit, and the family felt um, true. So My Beautiful Laundrette is on Criterion Channel right now, partnered with Barry Jenkins' short film My Josephine, which is also set in a laundrette, and it's a beautiful film inspired by post 9/11 um, xenophobia here in America, and it's gorgeous. I've actually saw it a few years ago, and I definitely recommend watching that as well. And then My Beautiful Laundrette is on DVD and Blu-ray from Criterion, and you can watch all the special features. So I don't know. Stephen Frears, love him or hate him, he's made some iconic films. My Beautiful Laundrette.